Welcome back to Let's Talk Race and Maryland. I'm your host, Harrison Paul. And today we're going to talk about a topic of the media again. And this is interesting because I've spoken on this before. I've come to understand how covert and microaggressions and how erosive media can be, especially when we're talking about race relations, how they have created narratives to keep us under, to indoctrinate our own people against each other, against ourselves. This has all played a massive hand in how they've been able to continue or to maintain the African and subdue the African in a space where his mind is colonized, his mind is imprisoned, where he sold him the idea that anything that he was not proper. That everything that was Western and European was the proper way, was a civilized way, was the appropriate way of doing things. And we have still believed that, whether we're talking about the topic of women, which is beauty, whether we're talking about our men believing their women are the figures of beauty, or whether our women believe deep down without realizing that, that their attributes represent beauty, represent femininity. There are many ways in which I've come to understand that the black man has been still very, very subject to this idea that colonialism brought, this dysfunction. And when we look at this headline that came up from The Economist, we see him doing his very, very trademark, very, very covert trademark ways of doing things. And check this out, it's up on the screen. Is Julius Malema the most dangerous man in South Africa? This was by The Economist. I want to tell you about this man's story for you guys to understand. You may not know the story. My mom repeats the story to me all the time. Do you want to know how this guy's story began? This is the only story that I know, but I can share it if something inspires me. When the Boers, meaning the white people, were coming into his household when he was a young boy, he had to see his mother naked one morning, late at night, when they came into his house. They're doing some form of a raid or whatever it may have been. They might have been taking the land, might have been taking the house, something. Then they stripped his mother naked. He was a small boy when he had to see his mother in that state, vulnerable state, scared for her life. And this is something he went through as a boy. And now he's risen up and here he is today. For us to expect that this man should be compromised is the very reason you see that we have not left apartheid. We have not left colonization. For the very reason that you are going to ask yourself, people like Elon Musk asked himself, why is this man like this? When we still know there's massive wealth disparity in South Africa between the whites and the blacks. When we know very little has changed since apartheid, just how things appear. But at its core, there hasn't been much change. This man is here today, and he's risen up, using his experience to rally an uncompromising movement for the EFF. And we expect this man to come with a box of chocolate and flowers. We expect this man to be moderate when he's asking himself, how could I have seen my mother naked as a small boy from the trauma that I faced? And you want to tell me the fact that it's not finished yet, but it's slightly better from there, that we should be okay with that. I was talking to someone today, and they were a white person, and they were saying Because I was talking about black women, talking about the wigs, and saying you need to understand the trauma behind that. You have to understand that this is not this is deep rooted. It's not a joke. Kind of empathizing, trying to teach them to empathize. And what was said to me was, well, yeah, it's getting better now. And the idea that we have to be patient with someone's humanity is disgusting. It's a racist ideology in itself. You talk about something getting better when you're discussing a job, a skill, a talent. You may not be there yet. Oh, Harrison, you may not be able to play that note on the guitar yet. You may not be able to hit those notes when you sing, but you'll get there. We'll arrive there eventually. This is someone's humanity. What about if we don't arrive at that place while the person is still breathing? I really love one of my favorite Martin Luther interviews where he was talking about how moderate kills progression. Moderacy kills progression. Can you believe in black and white screens when Martin Luther was sitting down 50 years ago, around that time? I think he died 50 years ago, so not long. 55. There were people who were still insinuating it's not as bad as it was. Obviously, life is not perfect, but relax. We'll get there. That's one of the things that makes me feel so motivated when I do what I do. Because I'll be sitting down thinking, oh, geez, black people would say this as well. And I'll sit and I'll watch an interview from Malcolm X or Martin Luther. And Malcolm X famously said, if you stick a knife in my back and you take it out halfway, it's still not progress. Even if you stick a knife in my back and you take it out completely, it's still not progress. Progress begins when we start to heal from the wound. That's progress. To think that he had to explain himself on the topic I'm explaining myself in 2024 motivates me so much. I did another interview of Huey P. Newton. I think I even put on one of my Instagram posts. And one of the reporters was saying, you scared us, Huey. You and the Black Panthers scared us. And there was a sense of trying to guilt trip, trying to play on that trick of the mind that they've always tried to put us in, where we are apologetic for our existence, or apologetic for our resistance movements, or apologetic for our pushback, whether we're actually talking about the topic or whether we're just talking in general, the aura of a black person, that it needs to be fire within every black person's belly as they move across in this life. To guilt trip someone out of that, as though, why are you like this? Calling black women the angry black woman, as if they've not suffered abuse. Where they have, now black women are manipulated out of feeling, oh goodness, I don't want to be the angry black woman. If you gotta be, I've told my mom before this won't work, if you gotta be, yes. It's all for good reason. To think that we want Julius Malema to be a moderate man when the job is not done. And I said, we cannot be moderate with someone's humanity. It's not with someone's humanity that you be moderate with. He is looking and saying, I'm still alive, seeing the same symptoms that caused the same cancer in our society that caused me to have such a horrific experience. And I'm supposed to be okay with this? Like I've been seeing loads of people post, we are just creating tomorrow's freedom fighters. Israel are creating the little boys who have seen this war. Then you're going to wonder why in 30, 40 years, they're coming and they're ready to shoot some stuff up. Come on, ask yourself. But that's the racism in itself. Teaches you to lack pity and lack empathy. Is Julius Malema the most dangerous man in South Africa? Now let me move on to my next point. My next point is this, Africans. I said in my posts before, and I'll put up on the screen for you guys to see it. In many ways, I'm not mad at the imperialist or the white man. No, he does his thing. I'm mad at my people who cannot seem to see through it, who will spend hours and hours with black people online complaining about African leaders without understanding whenever has Africa belonged to Africa, with the naivety to actually believe that at one point Africa belonged to Africa. To think that these Western powers were so naive as to give us our independence and really give us our independence. To cut off all the future profit that they had planned in the treasury for their country that was going to boost their civilization. To just say, you know what, my guilt, my conscience has stricken me. It's time to give Africans back what they're worth. And when it's time to reverse the psychology, that's why it starts with psychology. Everyone's afraid. No wonder we don't have a leader who's unwavering for African restoration. No wonder. Because the people themselves don't even want that from an African leader. They don't understand that that is what we need. It would scare you to see the man that we need in power right now. And all the things he'd be willing to do to get there. And it would take one BBC documentary to make you black people hate him. One dictatorship BBC documentary, and all you black people would have turned on him. So that's the point that I had made. And here we have Julius Malema, the most dangerous man in South Africa. There they go, The Economist. Here they're starting. Here they go. And Elon Musk has been making loud noise about this man, trying to fearmonger people. Listen, guys. We have to equip ourselves psychologically that when this man arrives, when men like Julius arrive, when women like Arikana arrive, one of my favorite women ever, she needs to be backed. He needs to be backed by a people who see themselves in those leaders. As African people, we like to cry and complain about our leaders. And one of the main reasons and one of the main things I've always done when I first began posting, from the first time I began posting about, anybody who knows me well will know I was just first doing stories and I literally black screen and type something. Then I went to tweets. Then I went to Facebook posts. Then I was there for some time. And eventually Tatenda came to me and was like, yo, can you do an interview and just chat about the things you do? And then she did that and she was like, you know what, do it. Another episode. And she did another episode. And I was just like, you know, one thing led to another, and I kept going. If there's one thing that I've understood, I would often ask myself and ask God, before I understood this topic as well as I understand it now, God, what's the importance? What's the significance in doing a status or doing this? Or I was trying to grasp it for a very long time, but I just said, listen, I'm going to speak on the little I know and speak about what I've been coming to understand. And then obviously my understanding grew and grew and grew. And I understood the African as I grew. And I understood that we are absolutely going nowhere until the psychology of the African is reversed. We are going absolutely nowhere. Because we will be unable to recognize ourselves, our feelings in a man like Julius, in a woman like Arikana, in a man like Patrice Lumumba, the POL, the new one. In many ways, I almost feel like it's too good to be true when I'm watching people like Julius. I feel like I'm watching someone in the heart of the struggles for independence, some old tapes. Because there's something about today's aura around the African that's become so lazy. And not lazy in the way you think. Not lazy, scared too lazy to work. But much rather, his oppressor's opinion has eroded him so much that he's begun to believe that his worth is as such. That he doesn't feel the need to continue to press the oppressor. So the oppressor can hide behind a faulty leader. A leader that's been placed by him. Which is why they chose to give us our independence in the first place. They understood that it was not going to hurt them. In fact, some may argue it's more beneficial to them now than it was before. Because now there's less push for resistance. And when people like him speak, well, no one believes him. Everyone thinks he's too harsh. I would always ask God, what is it? And I'm realizing, until the African has emancipated his mind. Let me give you this for an example. People like Donald Trump or Boris Johnson only fall out of love with their public when they have crossed their own people. When they've cheated, lied, stolen money, people wondering where the funds are going, where the taxes are going. That is the only time. A politician's race to become the next candidate or become the next politician, the next prime minister or the next president is never really hindered by any racist moments. Take that in for a second. As long as the candidate looks promising for policies or financial growth in that country, economic growth, anything within his character that may be a blotch in terms of his race relations or his being an ignorant person, it does not hinder, not even for black people. Well, asleep black people. I want you to understand that Julius Malema is a man who should have been on the top of all of our hearts right now. And the only reason he's really come to light globally of late was because of when he was rallying and singing the war songs. Hulet, Tamasa, Hulet, Kita, Kilame, Hirwatawata, Tamarumo, Hasicha. Where were you when I'm sick? Where were you when I'm there? So fast, Kichi, Emoye, so fast, Kichi, Etatin, Kichi, Kichima, Sipram Konto, Alliance, shoot to kill, Yamaza, kill the poor, the farmer. Kill the poor, the farmer. Brr, pa, brr, pa. Attention. And of course, people of South Africa have been supporting it on his side. But this man should be a global sensation right now. But black people don't even like radicalism. And it's actually sad we even call it radicalism. Because we are unable to identify ourselves in that person. So until we on the ground, the jobs of people like Dr. Umar, although you've trivialized his movement, decolonizing the mind of the African, taking out and cleaning off the imprint of the white man on the African's brain. Exposing his unearned importance in our minds and supremacy in our minds. We can't even get it in ourselves to connect with the likes of Julius Malema. So you cry about we don't have good leaders. Here you have a man who loves Africa. Loves Africa. Go and look him up. Loves Africa. And still you don't think he's enough. So what is enough for us, brothers and sisters? What is enough? Someone who gets on well with white people. That's the one you want. Because that's what you want for yourself. And then I'm going to say something big. Because I watched the show today of Ronald dissect the Shay Shay Courtney Wayne interview. Country Wayne, sorry. Check this out.
In order for things to change in our community, this has to change. We have to stop, let me be perfectly clear, operating in a mindset of white validation. Let me unpack that. A lot of us are enamored with the idea, oh, I'm on CNN, I'm on MSNBC, I'm on Fox News.
Brilliant. You should go watch the whole thing. It's quite powerful. But one of the main other factors that I thought about was us as black people need to start having our own news station. This is why I really like pages like African Stream. Shout out to African Stream. We really need to be having our own news stations. If we leave it to the imperialist to continue perpetuating his narrative, he's going to stain our name, as he's always done. Trust him to do that. We need to be concerned about taking hold of our narrative. We cannot be people who make a decision that, listen, keep our head down. I was talking to a sister today who's going through a situation in her workplace. And one of the first things she said was, it's water down the duck's back. She's going through a racism incident. Water's down through I don't really, no more. They have depended on us having thick skin for too long. Those blacks, they have thick skin. Now when we show that we're unhappy with something, it's as if we're exaggerating. Our standards have dropped so low for ourselves. I want us to understand this. If we hold that mentality of just ignore it, no. We need to combat it. Have our own news stations. Organize ourselves. They will continue to take hold of the narrative as long as they can. And the problem with black people, like Ronald said, we are so enamored by white approval. Subconsciously, it's been engraved in the African that if Fox said it, if CNN said it, if ITV News said it, if RTE News said it. I was just talking to someone recently and explaining to him how when I started to have a successful, spike in my career when I was a lot younger, the feeling of being in white spaces caused me and not feeling totally appreciated as a rapper in very white spaces caused me to undermine my art. If we break that down and unpack that, that is a colonized mind. Everything since we've been growing up, it was in our parents, it's in us. Anything Western is heavenly. We need to start betting on ourselves, betting on each other. I was talking to a brother today in the gym, and I was telling him, these days, though even if a brother wants to look me in the eye with the hostility we usually give each other, I will pursue that brother. Because I understand where that comes from. And I'm going to flip the narrative. It is time we had the most time for each other and the next black brother. And to uplift each other. If we began this way of thinking, we would recognize and identify the value in people like Julius Malema. Julius Malema's movement should be so huge right now. It's big in South Africa. It should be huge. We spend time criticizing people like Dr. Umar because we fail to see a man who loves the black community with all that is in him. We are not going anywhere. I don't care how much you point at leaders. Look yourself in the mirror and fix your consciousness as a black person. Remove the imprint of the imperialist on your mind. Because no matter who comes in, you would rather believe a post from The Economist. And when they organize themselves to make sure that people like Julius Malema will not destroy their profits in Africa and their interest in African profit, in African riches and wealth. Your brain is so hardwired that anything coming from white media, that anything coming from white people, they just have to get their big prominent white voices. Let's guess, people like Jordan Peterson. And you have made a decision to turn on great people like Julius Malema. It starts with the consciousness of the African people. Do not underestimate the era we are in with iPhones and phones and Instagram and social media, resources to learn and to understand the depths of neocolonialism. Do not miss up this opportunity, because there will be men and women who rise up, who will speak to that side of you, and you must be able to have something in you that says, now he's speaking my language. And no matter who tries to manipulate you, that this guy is a devil or a bad guy, that is your language. The very same way Westerners will vote them Donald Trump's and Boris Johnson's into power, regardless of anything that offends us as African people or even foreigners of any sorts. It's about them. Their self-determination is through the roof. Africans, we need to replicate, or rather, even have a greater sense. We have every reason to have a greater sense of self-determination, considering what has happened to us. We have to protect ourselves. Thank you so much for watching.
And I'm on a mission for you.